So the first part, and it is in a triad, is the triad of the morning star and Syncretic Theurgy, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. Second is the black flame between myth and ritual, and the Daeva-Yasna in modern practice. Ahriman and the left-hand path of the Yatuk Dinoih. Yatuk Dinoih is a word that means witchcraft, sorcery in Pahlavi and Avestan, an old Iranian language. So the triad of the morning star, and the purpose of the triad of the morning star was to formulate some basic parameters in which, when you go through initiation in your own course, which you have some markers to go by, because there's no specific grades or an order to really go through. This is a highly independent path, and you can be something as a Satanist, or you could be a member of different organizations and still be a Luciferian. There's a harmony on that path, and it's not dogmatic. So putting the triad together was just a loose marker to help validate certain points. Liberation, illumination, apotheosis. Mystery cults in the Hellenistic and Greco-Roman period include the Eleusinian mysteries. The mysteries symbolize the myth of the abduction of Persephone from her mother Demeter by the king of the underworld, Hades, in a cycle with 3 phases: the descent, and that's darkness, the search, and the ascent, with the main theme being the ascent of Persephone and the reunion with her mother. The Greek word for mystery means mystery or secret rite. The Greek mystikos means connected with the mysteries or private secret. So there is a connection, if you notice, between the triad, the descent, the search, and the ascent, with all kinds of different initiatory paths. And that's what kind of brings a lot of them in harmony. And that's because you have the basic search, the ability, the desire, and the connection to put yourself in that darkness, to let it encircle you, and to redevelop yourself from that. So that type of example is just to show that you will go through cycles in your life, in your initiation, and sometimes more than others. But the journey is similar in all mystery or initiatory avenues. Okay, the secret rites or mysteries in the ancient world include the descent into the darkness of the underworld, symbolic of the Anglo-Saxon word Hellenistic, which means a secret or a hidden place. That is the origin of hell in one sense. The initiation is the ordeal of embracing the forbidden chaos and primal shadow of our primal instincts. The infernal dreamscape contains the wealth and forbidden knowledge of the underworld. Hades was depicted as a regal god, much like a shadow Zeus. He was depicted as either Adonis, enthroned in the underworld, and as Pluto, or Pluton, the giver of wealth, pouring fertility from a cornucopia. The Romans knew him as Dis, or Pluto, the Latin form of his Greek title, Pluton, the Lord of Riches. And you can probably read this part, but does anyone see a connection between the concept of the wealth of the underworld and anything else in initiation? It's something that I thought about for a long time, because I'm always, in my research, connecting things that at first don't connect. And if I sense it, I keep going. And the thing with the wealth of the underworld, wealth is different things to different people. It can be knowledge, it can be something that gives you a tool to do more of what you want. It doesn't have to be money, it doesn't have to be other things. There's different kinds of wealth. So the wealth of the underworld was the hidden knowledge leading to power attained from confronting the forbidden or adversarial energies we commonly term as shadow or night side. The gold of the Luciferian is the luminous fire and energy fueling the blackened forge, being the triad of the morning star: liberation, illumination, apotheosis. Initiation requires the individual to begin to know thyself, including, of course, your dark primal instincts and what is coiled in your subconscious. To know what most deny or ignore in society, in the media, in the mainstream. To ignore about this darkness can be a damaging thing. To know your instincts and what fuels you and what inspires your subconscious is the very fuel and power to drive your conscious initiation and the daemon. Initiation is a continual order of evolution operating within both the material world and the spiritual one. Luciferians are autonomous black adepts who identify black representing the wisdom of self-motivated mastery, of encircling adversarial energies within your mind as being the altar within the temple of the mind, body, and spirit. This attainment of knowledge and power includes the simultaneous unity of will, desire, belief. And I say that that's a very important trinity in itself: will, desire, belief. Not one on its own will push you through necessarily, but the unity of those in the moment when you can feel the attainment of what you want. See how you're going to get there, but you feel that and have that feeling of what it's like once you have it. Then that moment, everything comes into place. And after, you might lose some of that feeling, but it happened, and your subconscious knows and is aware of that. And you're going to attract and motivate that energy out to making that happen. From the Arabic root word, which is composed of FHM, it translates black and alternately means wisdom, including the name Abu-Fai Hamat, which is the father of understanding, also Baphomet. The left-hand path is the hidden knowledge of using thought, words, and actions to compel, influence, and direct energy to manifesting both desire and refining consciousness. The Yatuk Dinoih reveals the 4 hells of sorcery: hell of evil thought, evil word, evil deeds, and the endless darkness called Anangra Tema, which is the abode of Ahriman. Now, I want to really clear, evil thought is not having bad thoughts about other people or disrupting anything in society. It's not about doing criminal acts. See, in monotheistic religions, and I don't want to point out Zoroastrianism because there are some very left-hand path concepts within the Magi of Zarathustra. But evil thought represents your thinking on your own. It's against common religion. You're calculating and you're making decisions and the accountability. So to the ancient Zoroastrian Magi and the ruling class, people that had heretical thoughts or thought outside of their political and religious structure were considered evil. Evil thought is connected with Ahriman or Akamana, which is the evil mind, one of the first created of Ahriman. Evil word is not throwing insults at people or saying bad things. It's simply choosing what you say and how you say it, and whatever your design is in life, the people you have to interact with, the people you have to work with, and how do you use language to support that. Evil deeds is exactly actions towards manifesting what your design is. And that can be little things at a time that can have an energy built up to last much longer. The forge of Azazel is from the myth of the Watchers and the many deific mask of the adversary, who as fallen angels descend and instruct humans on the black art of transforming the metals of the earth and the mastery of the inner and outer worlds. And Azazel, of course, is one, and the fallen angels, the Decadarchs and the Watchers, Grigori, are from the Book of Enoch, which was written at the time of the Seleucid kingdom and their mastery over Jerusalem. If you look at the Book of Maccabees, which is a propaganda book, of course, it gives you a very one-sided opinion, one-sided story about Antiochus IV being basically a satanic type being who slaughters all of the people because they won't stop worshiping Yahweh. Well, history has shown, and I found this through research, that that's not the case. But when you look at how that tale was written, it's reflecting the Hellenistic period and the influences that the priesthood and the very religious people did not want to take hold. So they were considered the Watchers, basically Hellenistic angels or types of energies that inspired others to practice sorcery and work outside of the structure. The Black Flame is essence is actualized via will to power. The immolating fire consumes the skins we shed as a serpent. And that's a common underlying theme. Many people outside of the left-hand path or paganism or anything see a snake and it represents evil or something bad. But actually, serpents in ancient Mesopotamia, throughout the Akkadians, Sumerians, Syrians, Neo-Assyrians, going into the Canaanites to Egypt, all through even Europe, the serpent represents fertility, represents renewal, thus the shedding of the skin, and healing. That's why the caduceus, that became the medical symbol of the Greek god, and originally a serpent god called Ningisida, has the healing serpents with it. So when you go behind the image, when you can see past the mask of what that is, there is a great benefit to it and a whole different world of how you can perceive things. You just have to go past often what was pushed upon us as children or society. Fueling the serpent fuels our radiance and apotheosis. Our radiance is not some mystical abstract, but the radiance is the force of will, of character, of who you are, and how that is projected outward as a majority. Now I'm going to talk about, for a moment, the Hellenistic ruler cult, Syncretic, Theurgy, and apotheosis. These are all connected with my expansion, my contribution, and my initiatory work within Luciferianism. The Hellenistic ruler cult begins with Alexander III of Macedon, Alexander the Great. The Daeva-Yasna were the successor of Stratagoi, which is self-empowered, to ascend and become Basileus, or king, of their particular dynasty. And termination, and became autocrators, which is feminine. Conjoined with a ruler's name in the Hellenistic period, it often identified Epiphanes as the deity incarnate, and traits readily visible in the individual. An example of this is Hellenistic Egyptian Basileus, Ptolemaic Dionysus. Translated as Ptolemy the New Dionysus. Neos, new, implies youth, renewal, and freshness. Grandson of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, and his as I said, relative, Mithridates Eupator Dionysus. Mithridates is translated gift of Mithra. Mithra has various incarnations throughout the ancient Near East, but he is associated and also with Apollo, who is also a plague sender as much as he heals, and also Helios. Mithras was a warlord also, but he's a deity of oath and contract. So Mithras is a very noble, and it has a balanced nature as well. So Eupator is good father, and Dionysus, the Roman Bacchus, is the god of wine, vegetation, pleasure, festivity, madness, and wild feasts. He's also a conqueror who Alexander wanted to imitate in his journey. Dionysus is very much a model for the Pergamon stories in the Bible about that being the throne of Satan. It reflects Dionysus, the serpent, god of healing associated with Dionysus, and also Zeus, who was considered an adversary god to Yahweh in New Christianity. The Nephilim as symbolic myth. Union of spirit and flesh begets the beast. Based on the traits and achievements of rulers, along with the level of mythological narrative and idealization, kings in the Hellenistic age soon adopted a mythological narrative which the Book of Enoch named Nephilim, or giants. The Watchers in Enoch 1 are representations in this Hebrew legend rejecting Hellenistic traditions and cultures. A deity would temporarily incarnate and mixing with a human woman became a patron deity of a royal family. Along with the cultic veneration and achievements, the daemon of the Hellenistic ruler would be depicted with symbolic associations and a mythological representation. Identical in essence to demigods of ancient tales of Greece and Mesopotamia, Nephilim giants who in Enoch 1 are warlike and would devour flesh and drink the blood of those they kill in battle. Better still, after physical death, these Nephilim or giants would become, quote, evil spirits who would rise up and haunt the earth as demons. The traits of ambition, cunning, strength of will, and often ruthless behavior against enemies was reviled by the Hebrew scribes and priesthood of Jerusalem, giving these Hellenistic rulers their polytheistic spiritual practice a dark and demonic mythological narrative, thus eventually identified with the legions of the New Testament, Satan and Lucifer. This is an example of a daemon of a particular ruler used as propaganda in Ptolemaic Egypt. This is Ptolemy III, Euphrates, the benefactor, who actually one of his Egyptian epithets or throne names was he who spills the blood of his enemies. He's the only Basilius king who had that epithet added to his ruling name. Ptolemy III, that probably is pretty much an accurate portrait of him. It's not too idealized. He still has normal features, but he's wearing the crown of Helios. Helios, as you'll see later, is associated with the Abramelin demon, Oreus, who's also in the Testament of Solomon as Orneus, and also in the Equation. Helios is akin to Apollo, often identified as a solar deity. The crown shows that he's the ruler of the sky. That's the message. He's wearing the Aegis of Zeus, representing land. Earth is the master of Egypt. And then the trident behind him is that he is the master of the sea. So they're a political statement and religious one, because they did have a cult for their family where they offered libations and incense, is that is the daemon that essentially elevates the dynasty and maintains them. The king is deified and his daemon idealized. Ruler cult invigorated the daemon as the idealized youthful deity. It's you take the person, and how do you think of him, that person, or his higher self, if it was a deity, that energy? What would it look like? That's what they did. They didn't worship the guy, the person, as king. They worshiped the daemon. This practice started in the Hellenistic world right around Alexander's death. Specific symbols indicated traits, associated traits. You have Zeus Olympos. This is the devil, if you will, that caused so-called the Maccabee rebellion. This is the one, abomination of desolation. But it's Zeus, the god of Olympias, the god of order and victory in the Hellenistic world. He's holding Nike, the daemon of victory. And Nike is crowning Epiphanes. That's his manifest deity name. That's why he has.
Was a woman. I'm sorry.
No, that's Antiochus IV. Not a woman, but his full name is Antiochus, Basilius Antiochus Nikephoros, which is bringer of victory. He adopted that epithet after his Egyptian victory before the Romans kicked him out. The radiate crown of Antiochus IV after 173 BC was done to present his deification as Theos, God. Following his ritual working, and they have records for this, in the city of Tyre, festival of Melkart, also known as Heracles, and Nergal, in which at the moment of the sun's rays hitting the king at dawn, he is an individual rather than a political religious structure. This concept originally was something that I worked on personally, because in discovering the true will, the black flame, what guided me, what was a part of me, what I saw could be potential, I wondered what if you visualized and had a concept of what that looked like? How would that work? It's not something that has anything to do with anything outside of my workings, but it's something that, after utilizing it, actually brought different aspects of the control of specific type of workings. It was beneficial, and it wasn't overly complicated. That's why I spoke about the ruler cult, was that it could be applied on the individual level. That's what I think Aleister Crowley might have had in mind from his influences when he really wrote about that in Magick Book 4. My virtues make me demonic? Yes, please. The adversary in Christian doctrines is but a garment or deific mask to be a representation of energy and traits alien to Christians or monotheists. What are those? Ambition, individualism, knowledge seeking, indulging in the pleasures of life, balancing darkness and light. Some Christians will say, well, that's not totally true, but a lot of the experience I have is you shouldn't seek knowledge, and you need to listen to what they're telling you, or take the knowledge that they give you as face value and don't act out of line. The black flame makes aware that life in a physical body is a vessel for us each to enjoy the adventures of life. You can't wash away your mistakes and bad choices with saying a prayer, only by being your own redeemer and thinking before you act. And if you do something that you feel bad about, trying to make it better. Black flame and magic. Luciferian rituals must be self-directing, emphasis placed upon your quality and focus of thoughts, compelling internal self-transformation, and as a result, external change according to the will. Remember that do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law is not do what you want. There's a big difference, and most people who are not interested in magic or any type of esoteric tradition only think that do what you will is basically do everything you want. It's a union between consciousness and the black flame. So illuminating or guiding your path and shadowing forth your inherent desire or will. That's understanding what your direction is, or the course of your direction, and sticking to that, not allowing yourself to be distracted. The black flame. The origins of the black flame go all the way back to ancient Samaria, and it was called Malamu. It's both divine epiphany, incarnation, and terrifying radiance. In early Mesopotamian religion and mythology, there was a concept of divine radiance, known first in Sumerian as the Mi-Lam and Akkadian Milamu. Milamu is related to the Assyrian and Babylonian cosmology and metaphysical structure. Milamu is the shining radiance which is described as terrible, associated with deities and magical objects. The etymology of the compound noun, mi-lam, has two parts. The meaning of mi, pronounced me, is translated vital force, will to life, desire, and lam is written with the sign ne, cuneiform, meaning fire and flame. Other associated words written with the same sign are or Sabeti, meaning seven, deified heroes, chaos monsters such as Azag and Wawa, Tiamat, the primal protein goddess, and Abyssic dragon along with her consort Absu were the first to possess Malamu. In Islamic and Sufi religion and mythology, The angel and jinn of smokeless fire, Azazel, also known as Shaitan and Iblis, is identified with the imagination. The black light is the symbolic herald for super consciousness. Sounds very much, in some avenues of Sufi mysticism, the concepts of super consciousness and passing and embracing the guardian of the threshold is very similar in some ways to left-hand path traditions. The black flame is made greater by the enhancement of the black depth passing through the temptations, tests, and the like with like of the daemon passing through the abyss by way of the adversary. If strong in will, the adversary identifies an enhancement is attained. Does anyone have any questions about the first two parts? Any comments?
Isis, Osiris, and Horus.
No, there, you know, and that is a very close thing. And also something to support that was very impactful to me in my, around the late 90s to early 2000s, was something I discovered with Jack Parsons' writings. And it referred, and I saw where this was something of initiation with many different groups and traditions, is that the what I call Infernal Union. It was Beast in Babylon conjoined, but instead it's Samael, Lilith begets Baphomet. It's an alchemical symbol of inner transformation, initiation. So yes, Thelema has a great impactful creativity within it that I know has had a wonderful impact on me, even though I'm not formally have ever been a part of OTO or anything, but I understand the great value of it and how it can fuel. Crowley went so far in his time and it expanded because of him to later people.
Yeah, I almost feel like that can also map onto the old alchemical principle of Mercury, sulfur, salt.
Yeah, and it's the triad thing. And you know, at first you don't pick up on it, but after you really work with a lot of things, you start noticing the triad in many things. It's almost funny, count the triads.
Yeah, see the floors everywhere.
Yeah. Any others? Yeah.
One thing I noticed, the definition of lamb or law.
Like the deity.
The deity that visited Crowley and dictated the law.
Mm-hmm.
So
And it relates to fire.
Illumination
Mhm.
reference there.
Yeah, and I know Kenneth Grant used to point out some associations, whether they're legitimate or not, with Lam and Aiwass, who he equated with Shaitan. Whether that's what Crowley meant, intended, or anything else, I don't think it is really relevant as long as it kind of influences and has a validation for you. If it inspires you, great, you know, and see where you go with that. But yeah, Lam definitely has some interest there.
Yeah, when you said that the symbol of the mind, body, and spirit, that the mind represents the altar, what do...
The altar as the three, the center.
Oh, so do the body and the spirit represent anything else in that symbol?
All of when I say the temple of body, mind, and spirit, the altar is the center, the core. It's kind of your primal beginning, and the daemon, the higher consciousness, is between that and what people call the divine, or the energies that you associate with as divine.
So do the body and the spirit represent another physical part of the temple?
Not necessarily. It's kind of that unity of those centered. Yeah. Anyone else before I go? Yeah.
You had mentioned, you had made a reference to Baphomet earlier,
Mhm.
and from what I had collected my information together was that Baphomet was a mistranslation of a mistranslation, and then of course Eliphas Levi stepped in, and so I'm curious as to where you got your...
Idris Shah.
What's that?
Idris Shah. He was a Middle Eastern writer on a lot of Islamic and Sufi, particularly Sufi works. He wrote as Archon Darul with some books of Black Magick, which were printed from between the 60s up to they're still in print today. Idris Shah did a lot of work with the origins of the Bedouin witches and the different symbolism that kind of fed into the medieval witches setting. But Idris Shah is the one who showed the translation of those words and how the father of understanding. To add to that, one of the names that they gave Alexander the Great after he conquered Iran was that he was a son of Ahriman, a destroyer, but he was called Dual-Qarni, which is the two-horned lord, also associated at times with the symbolism of Baphomet. If you know the O&A, the Sinister tradition, they have their views or theories about Baphomet being a female, kind of a Lilith figure. But I don't deny that that could have been, the Mahomet could have been a mistranslation for some, but it seems pretty compelling.
Baphomet's a huge amalgamation anyway, so.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where that came from. So I'm going to run through the last part. Stop me and say anything if you have questions. Don't wait, just throw it out there. This is Ahriman, Devas, and the Yatuk Dinoih. For the left-hand path adept, the vast tradition derived from the ancient Near Eastern heretical sects such as the Daeva-Yasna, meaning demon worshipper, also includes the Yaddis, wizards, and black magicians who practice Yatuk or sorcery. Plutarch, in the famous passage of Deicide, records that Zoroaster the Magus taught men to sacrifice to Ormuzd offerings and vows of thanksgiving, and to Ahriman, offerings of gloom to avert evil, and calling upon these demonic forces as a tool of benefit. This is a sigil of Ahriman, a modern one, based on a very, very archaic tin thing of a horn-type demon from Iran. But all of the symbolism shows the eyes of Ahriman, and also the names, the epithets of Ganamino and Ahriman in Pahlavi or Avestan. The etymology of Angra Mainyu is Mainyu spirit, and Angra, when translated in Sanskrit, is Hantar or smiter. The Old Indic word Mainyu is force, impulse, and violence. In the Bundahishn, a text in Pahlavi, Ahriman struggles against Ahura Mazda. Every peaceful, beautiful, and creative thing the good Lord creates, Ahriman balances it with a warlike, terrible, and predatory creation. Libations and offerings were made to the deity Ahrimanos in the Roman Empire, and this went all the way to England. They found a total of 5, at this time, statues that show a lion-headed god who Franz Cumont early on may have mistakenly called Zervan. There are depictions of Zervan as a god of time, but the lion-headed deity who guards the threshold is very much akin to the descriptions of Ahriman in a slightly Hellenized and Greco-Roman way. They would offer now, and these were the people associated with the Rig Veda texts. They had groups called Marianu, which were wolfshirts, who settled in North India, but they were raiding warriors, nomads, who fought with the pastoralists who were in Persia.